What's up, Met fans? Welcome back. Talking Mets with Rob, episode 11. How's everybody doing? Happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day. The last time I spoke to you guys, we talked a lot about the Francisco Lindor press conference and what these Francisco Lindor and Carrasco brings to the table with this 2021 roster. So we're going to get a little bit more into that, but there's been a little bit of news the last couple of days about Brad Hand possibly signing with the Mets. Ken Rosendahl had a report saying that the Mets and Hand are close to a deal. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. Apparently, he got bad information, and the deal is not as close as we originally thought. So, what does that mean for the Mets? Well, at the moment, the Mets basically are not the only team involved with Brad Hand. The Blue Jays are, a couple other teams are that have been for Brad Hand. It seems like it's going to take about a 2 year deal to get Hand, which kind of makes sense. After the Indians did not offer him a contract and released him. So, what happens if the Mets do not get Brad Hand? What are the options uh, for left-handed relievers? Well, there's a couple out there. There's, as we well know, Justin Wilson, who's been with the Mets the last 2 years, who pitched very well for us the last couple of years. That's an option. Would you want to go back to him? He's going to probably cost less than Brad Hand, maybe on a 1, maybe 2 year deal. Then there's Jake McGee, who pitched for the Dodgers last year, and the last couple of years he pitched for the Rockies as well. He's pretty good. He had a 2.66 ERA. And then it's good old friend Oliver Perez, who is about 39 years old, going to be 40. He's up there in age. Can you really trust him? Would the Mets go that route if they lose out on other guys? Possibility. But with Brad Hand, he can be such a big key to this bullpen. Not only can he close, as we've seen with Cleveland, but he can also pitch in the eighth, pitch in the seventh. So he's versatile. If we can have Brad Hand and Lugo be the versatile guys in the later innings along with Trevor May, that's a big deal. And that's a really good bullpen. And that can really help out our rotation, especially early on in the season, so we don't tax them. So, Brad Hand is not a Met, just so everybody's clear. There was false reports, bad sources that said that Brad Hand was close to a deal with the Mets. Not true. So, Brad Hand, not a Met. Next, George Springer has been offered deals from the Mets and from the Blue Jays. There's a couple of things that we don't know about the Mets offer. We just know it's 9 figures. That's all we know. We don't know the years. We don't know the dollar amount. But we do know about the Blue Jays making that offer. The offer that we've heard is for 5 years, $100+ million. And there's some sources that are saying that it's about 5 years, 115. So, will the Mets match that? Or are they going to figure out a deal or wait until they can get the deal done with a reliever before they go uh, hard after George Springer? Or they've been doing that all along? They might get Springer first, they might get Brad Hand. But we really don't know. So it's kind of interesting that we found out a little bit more about the Blue Jays offer to George Springer, but not much about the Mets offer at all. We noticed with the Lindor Carrasco deal that nobody really heard anything about it. We heard no news, and then the only news that we found out is when the Mets basically made the deal. It started on that Monday and ended, and the deal was closed on Thursday. This can be the same issue, is why we're not hearing a lot of information about the deal that the Mets offered Springer. But what I'm trying to think is, how far do you want to go to pursue George Springer because there was reports and sources stating that George Springer would like to be close to Connecticut, close to home. Obviously, Queens is a lot closer to Connecticut than Toronto. It's across the border. It's another country. But there's also a lot of factors that you have to look in also. Even if the Mets don't have the highest offer and the Blue Jays do, the Blue Jays, because of COVID protocols in Canada, they might not be able to play in Toronto. So I feel like that's a lot of the reason why a lot of the players haven't chose Toronto. There's a few offers that we heard about that the Blue Jays offered more money and more years to certain players, and the player didn't want to go there. Not only because of the COVID protocols in Canada and not knowing where you're going to basically live for 2021 and who knows how much longer, but you don't really the players don't want to deal with that, especially when the collective bargaining agreement is going to be up after this year. So there's a lot of issues that players, I guess, don't want to deal with, and it's a big reason why every time the Blue Jays try to make an offer to a player, the player went elsewhere. And it's not like the Blue Jays did not want to spend money. They've been trying to. They just haven't. But they're also heavy after Trevor Bauer. Now, I really think the Blue Jays are going to get either George Springer or Trevor Bauer. That's just my opinion. If the Blue Jays want to get Trevor Bauer and they get him, that means Springer's probably off the table. And Springer only has one suitor, and it's the New York Mets. Now the Mets can have a deal in place that's a lot lower than what they were expecting to pay. And Springer doesn't really have a choice at this point. He'd probably just come to the Mets and take maybe a 5 year 90 million, maybe 5 year 100 million. So there's a lot of issues that comes with going to Blue Jays if you're a free agent. And we already seen that with a lot of players. So I really think Springer's still going to be a Met. It's just a matter of what's the deal going to be? Is that going to prevent us from getting a big time left handed reliever in Brad Hand? Because you don't really want to overdo it. And it's a big deal because it seems like the Mets don't want to go over the luxury tax. And I can't blame them on that. But at the same time, it's not a hard cap. If they go over this year, they're paying about $5 or $6 million in luxury tax. It's not the big time 10, 20, 30 million if you go over the luxury tax for a couple of years in a row. So with Springer, the Blue Jays gave an offer of 5 years, 100 plus million. A couple of reports saying, I think specifically John Heyman said it, that it's about 5 years, $115 million. So that's a pretty good offer. 5 years, 115 million. But if it was that good of an offer, why haven't Springer took the deal yet? You know what I'm saying? It. I think he's really thinking about, wow, if I go to Toronto, I have no idea where I'm living. I have no idea where they're gonna play. Is it gonna be Buffalo? Is it gonna be Toronto? Is it gonna be somewhere else in the States? Maybe Florida. They don't really know. And that's a big deal for a lot of players, especially when it comes to family and just, the comfort of knowing when you got home games, you can sleep in your own bed. And that's probably not going to be the case for Toronto this year, and who knows how much longer. So I think the Mets are in the driver's seat when it comes to Springer, and I think that the Mets don't have to outbid Toronto at all. I think if their deal is close, even if it is lower, say if it's 5 years, say 110, I think Springer will take that deal. I don't think you're going to have to go over $10, $20 million just for him to come to New York. I don't think that's the case. I think he wants to be in New York. I think he wants to be close to the Connecticut, which a lot of reports has stated that he wants to be. So it just seems like he don't want to go to Toronto, because if he did, clearly I think Toronto has the bigger offer, and I think the Mets know that. But why would the Mets spend more and offer him more when he clearly does not want to go to Toronto, because he would have took that deal already, in my opinion. with the starting rotation, just to go a little bit into Bauer a little bit. I think the Mets are 100% out on Bauer. And the reason why I say that is because, obviously the Carrasco deal is a big deal. He can be a strong number 2 and number 3 starter. And it just helps our rotation with a lot more and pushing Stroman and pushing Peterson back in the rotation a little bit. But so I really think Bauer is just out of the question. And I think the only players that the Mets will be focused on is bench players and Springer and Hand. I don't think they're going much further than that. Can they still get Springer and Hand? Absolutely. Can they give an extra year in the Springer deal to lower the AAV so they can stay a little bit under a luxury tax this year? So just in case if they got to make a big trade during the trading deadline, they can do that and have a little bit of flexibility. Or do they say, all right, we just can't spend this much on Springer. Let's go all in on Brad Hand and get Jackie Bradley Jr. That's a way too. So back to George Springer. Blue Jays offered 5 years, 100 plus million. Most likely it was 5 years, $115 million. And the Mets offer is somewhat unknown, but we know it's a 9-figure deal, possibly 5 years, around $100 million, most likely. And if you were Springer, wouldn't you, the way players are, they usually take the highest deal. If Toronto has the highest deal, why hasn't Springer taken the deal? Because he doesn't want to play in Toronto. I don't think he has any interest in playing in Toronto unless they completely overbid around $20 to $30 million more than the Mets would bid. And I think that's what the holdup is. Maybe he's trying to pinch a little bit more dollars out of the Mets, and that's what the holdup is. And I think the Mets are not going to budge. Why should the Mets budge? They should just go to Springer. Listen, Blue Jays got the higher bid on the table. Take the offer. And then Springer's like, well, yeah, we know. You don't want to go to Toronto. It's just that clear. Nobody said that, but it just seems like he does not want to go to Toronto. Maybe he doesn't like Toronto, even if there was no COVID protocols and they might not be playing in Canada. Maybe they'd be playing in Florida. Maybe they play in Buffalo. Maybe he just doesn't want to be in Toronto, even though Toronto could be a very good team this year. Maybe he just wants to be close to home. Couple hours away from Queens to Connecticut. Not a bad drive. So I think when all is said and done, the New York Mets and George Springer are going to find a way to work out a deal, and Springer's going to be patrolling center field for the next couple of years for the Mets. Just a little bit more news, what the Mets did on the bench. Jose Martinez, they gave a deal to bring him in to be a right-handed bat off the bench. And he can play multiple positions. He can play first. He can play the corner outfields. So I think that's a good alternative off the bench, especially he is right-handed. As we all know, he's left-handed. This team is left-handed dominant in the lineup. And of course, Lindor helps that situation a little bit because he is a switch hitter. But again, we still need that right-handed bat in the lineup. And I just think Springer is just made for the New York Mets. He's a right-handed bat. He's very good defensively. He is a little bit older. He's 31 years old, 31 years old. But I still think even if you give him a 6-7 year deal, I still think you can have 3, maybe 4 years of him in center field with no issues before he has to become a corner outfielder. So I think there'll be a lot of information in the next couple of years to know that Springer can probably be a corner outfielder in a couple of years. We got to worry about extending Conforto, extending Lindor, talking a contract extension with Syndergaard. So there's a couple of guys that we don't know long term is going to be on this team. So I think it's really important to really focus on the 2021 team right now. Because Sandy even said it. Even though they give up a lot for Lindor, if it's a 1-year thing with Lindor and the Mets can't extend him, they are comfortable with that trade if Lindor leaves. Because they still got Carrasco for 2 years and a vested option for a 3rd year for Carrasco. So I really think the Mets, they talk about, the 3 to 5 year window of winning the World Series. But you have to remember, bringing in Carrasco, another older starting pitcher in the mid 30s, along with DeGrom, who is in his prime, but he's 31 years old, 32 years old. He's getting up there too. So how many good years are excellent Cy Young years can you expect from DeGrom still? Maybe two, possibly two, maybe 3 years, if that. So you have a small 3 year window, which I think the Mets, the Sandy Alderson and Steve Cohen are really focusing on. I think they want to do everything they can to put a great team around DeGrom, because you can't keep on wasting Cy Young Award years from DeGrom and not make the playoffs and not be able to be a championship team, or at least the possibility of making the playoff and possibly getting into the World Series and winning a championship. We can't just keep on losing these years from DeGrom. We wasted so many already. We can't keep on doing this. So even if we have to be a little bit over the luxury tax and the Mets got to pay that luxury tax fine, okay, that's okay. I don't think that's too much of an issue when it comes to Cohen. But even if they want to stay a little bit under that cap, they can still spread out that deal with Springer to lower that AAV a little bit. And that's important, especially when it comes to Brad Hand, which I think the Mets are also going to get. So I really think the Mets are going to get Springer and going to get Hand. I think it's just a little bit of negotiating tactics by Springer and the Mets, knowing that the Mets have Springer and is back against the wall. Because I really believe that he would have been a Blue Jay already if he really wanted to go to Toronto. It's just common sense. You know it, I know it. We might not hear about that much, on Twitter and social media, but I guarantee you, he does not want to go to Toronto, and he's doing everything he can in his power and telling his agent, listen, I don't want to go to Toronto. Try to up the deal with the Mets. I think that's the idea. So if we can get that AAV down just a little bit for Springer, I think we can swoop in, get Brad Hand for a 2 year deal around 8 or 9 million, get Springer around between 18 to 20 million, and that's right under and right along the luxury tax threshold, which it doesn't really give us a lot of flexibility, but gives us just enough, just in case we got to make that big deal, bringing in another bullpen arm, maybe another starter, God forbid anybody gets hurt during the trade deadline. We don't really know because we don't know, where we are in the standings. We don't know what players are doing well. What are we struggling on? Where we're struggling position wise, or in the rotation, or in the bullpen. So that's important also. So to recap, Brad Hand is not a Met. The deal was not done. The Mets and Hand does not have a deal in place. Ken Rosendahl did report that a few days ago, but he was wrong. His sources wrong. He admitted it. So at the moment, Brad Hand is still on the market. There's still a couple of teams that are bidding against forehand against the Mets. So we got to see where that's going to lie. And I think Brad Hand's going to sign before we all know exactly what's going to happen with Springer. I think it's going to go Brad Hand and Springer with the Mets. I think that's what they're focused on. So as much as the Blue Jays can be aggressive, I don't think they're going to land Springer. Just my opinion. I just think it's just inevitable. Springer's going to be a Met and Brad Hand's going to be a Met. It's just a matter of numbers to keep it a little bit under the luxury tax for this Mets team, and to give that little flexibility for Sandy Alderson to do what he has to do in a trade deadline, just in case we need somebody. So to recap what we talked about, George Springer was offered a contract from the Blue Jays for 5 years, $100 million plus. Most likely it was 5 years, $115 million. Our New York Mets made a nine-figure deal offer to Springer. The offer is technically unknown at this point, but we just assume that it's probably about 5 years, around the $100 million, maybe a little more of $100 million. And that's why Springer probably hasn't taken a deal yet, because I really think he's trying to get that number up a little bit with the Mets so he can sign with the Mets, because he definitely does not want to go to Toronto unless they completely outbid the Mets by a lot of money. probably around 10, 15, 20 million. Brad Hand is not a Met, not yet. Maybe we'll find out in a few days what's going on. I want to thank you guys for listening. Don't forget spring training's coming in about a month, pitchers and catchers. I can't wait. Ready for baseball. Don't forget, guys, check out the YouTube channel. Please subscribe, like, comment. I will talk to you guys next time, and let's go Mets.